Today's world is home to horrific acts of violence, extremism, and terror of all kinds. Many people directly blame religion, in particular Islam, for much of the violence carried out in its name. But, as a Muslim, I have something to tell you. There is no link between Islam and terrorism. Now, don't get me wrong. There is obviously a strong link between certain Muslims and terrorism, but Islam is a teaching, and therefore has to be judged on what it actually teaches. So what does the Holy Quran say? Well, in chapter 2, it states that you can never force people in matters of religion. Chapter 5 likens the murder of one innocent life to the murder of the whole of mankind. Chapter 60 tells Muslims to live in peace with people of other faiths and backgrounds in what it calls kindness and equity. Chapter 109 says that people are free to follow whatever religious beliefs they want. Now these verses, and many more, were carried into action by the Prophet Muhammad of Islam. He lived in peace and harmony with people of many different faiths. He hated fighting, and the early Muslims only ever fought in direct self-defense. As historian Reverend De Lacy O'Leary wrote,
"The legend of fanatical Muslims sweeping through the world and forcing Islam at the point of the sword upon conquered races is one of the most fantastically absurd myths that historians have ever repeated."
Islam is not to blame. A tiny, tiny fraction of the 1.6 billion Muslims may well be. But why blame Islam for extremism, when extremism and terrorism exists in every ideology? Do we blame the Gospels for the IRA? Do we blame Buddhism for Buddhist extremists in Burma? Do we blame atheism for organizations like the League of Militant Atheists, who murdered religious people in Soviet Russia? And what about eco-terrorism, or terrorism done by extreme right-wing, left-wing, and separatist groups? The reality is that even in very recent history, a huge part of global terrorism is not motivated by religious ideologies, but by political and social causes. What this tells us is that extremism isn't the exclusive domain of any ideology, be it religious or secular. There have always been, and perhaps always will be, people who are willing to trample on the rights of others so as to satisfy their own desires. To justify their horrific actions, they have to appeal to the highest authority in their society. In more religious settings, it will be God who is appealed to. In less religious settings, it will be noble ideals like freedom, democracy, and justice. But whatever virtuous ideal is used to justify the murder of innocent lives, we can always discern political, financial, racial, or territorial ambitions at heart. So, don't fall for it. Religion doesn't create terrorism. People create terrorism. In fact, the true teachings of religion are the solution, not the problem. If those who murder in the name of religions ever truly studied their own teachings, they would drop their guns. And if those who promote terrorism indirectly, through their own injustices, cared about the disorder they would create, then the world would be a very different place indeed.
Be sure to subscribe by pressing the red subscribe button below. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram, and can find more content and even ask questions on www.endofatheism.com.